To the best of Buckeye. I'm Superintendent Brian Williams, and I'm joined with Carolyn Wagleski, our treasurer, and Glenn Reisner, our athletic director. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. The topic for our TV show today is athletics and pay to participate and revenue and expenditures. Recently, our Financial Advisory Committee, who advises the Board of Education on all types of financial issues, recently took a look at our expenditures and revenue and how it affects pay to participate for athletics. We are often asked, we pay a lot of money for pay to participate, and certainly that is the case. There's a lot of money that our athletes and our band members are paying to be a part of our organizations. And we're often asked, where does all that money go, and why can't pay to participate be reduced? And obviously there's a lot of questions there and a lot of answers there, but one of the topics that we've often discussed, and part of it goes back a couple years, in that when our levy was on the ballot, we talked about passing that levy in order to keep everything status quo, that we were not passing that levy in order to bring things back, such as busing or positions. We also indicated that that levy was not going to be passed in order to reduce things like pay to participate. So there is a history there a little bit that with that levy, that was what we promised our community. But beyond that, I know we've often been asked, why can't we reduce pay to participate? If that money that we're collecting is covering the cost of athletics, why can't we reduce it? So we wanted to take the opportunity, once our Financial Advisory Committee studied this data, and I want to thank Ms. Wagleski and Mr. Reisner for providing this data. But once that data was examined, it kind of became clear that what our students pay in pay to participate fees does not begin to cover the cost of athletics. And we'd like to take a minute today to address that, talk about that, and try to illustrate for our families and our communities just how much athletics costs with regards to comparing it to pay to participate. So maybe we can start out. Mr. Eisner, again, thank you for being here today. Can we talk a little bit about pay to participate, just procedurally? So we know that students that are participating in athletics needs to pay a pay to participate fee. Can we talk just in general, like how does that work? How is it collected? Where does that money go?
Okay, well, usually the coaches are handing out a form, which is a pay to participate form. This is a breakdown. It tells me which sports they're playing, so I keep record of that. And they just turn that form into me about a week before the first event, either paid in full, or if they cannot afford it, and they want to run a payment plan, they have to meet with me so I can set up a payment plan for them, so that it's paid up before half of the season's over with.
Okay.
So
good. And that form, can that form be found on your website?
Yes, it can be found on my website.
Okay.
It's under forms off the main athletic booster file.
Okay. So if people are looking for that form, it can be found on our website off the athletic page. So that's good information to have. And it sounds like if once a student is committed to participating in an activity, obviously they need to pay their fee in order to participate. And if there's a financial situation in which people are struggling with that, they can meet with you and set up a payment plan.
Yes, they can meet with me in my office, and I have a form they have to fill out. It's basically a due bill type form, and we go from there. So they tell me when they're going to make their payments and how much they're going to make, and I follow up with that every week.
Yeah. Now, occasionally, and again, this is one of those instances where we want to try to be fair to everybody, but in the very rare instances that somebody doesn't pay their pay to participate fees, are there penalties for that?
Oh yeah, the penalties are first you can't participate in your next event until that amount is paid up, and if you won't be able to participate in the sports you're in if you don't get it paid up by the end of your payment plan set up.
Good. And eventually they won't be able to graduate.
No, it goes under school fees, so they won't get their diploma their senior year.
And again, that's certainly not something that we hope happens. I mean, we want to work with all of our families in order to assure that we're working with them in order to take care of any fees that they owe, whether that be athletic or anything else that they might owe. We don't want that to be the case. And fortunately, for the most part, I mean, by the time we get to graduation, fees are paid off and students are able to walk across the stage, and that doesn't become an issue. But I guess at some point that could come into play. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the revenue generated by athletics. And as you can see from our pie chart, and I'll be cheating and looking on the computer here, but as we talk about revenue for athletics, you can see that and again, if it may be difficult for somebody to read the screen, but let's talk about the major areas. But in general, Ms. Wogleski, the number one revenue generator for athletics would be
pay to participate.
And how much do we generate yearly in pay to participate?
The graph that I am presenting is from last fiscal year, because it is a full year.
Right.
Pay to participate last year that we collected was over $207,000. Admissions to the football games and the basketball games was $65,000, which is represented in the blue. We also have some parking and some passes, family passes, which generated $14,000. Athletic fundraisers that Mr. Reisner does for our students here on campus, about $6,500. And then we had some sale of some assets, some jerseys and some donations, and then we had one state tournament last year. And that's another $2,200.
And then the last very, very small is donations that we did receive. It looks like almost $1,300 in donations, just people out of the goodness of their heart making donations to our athletic department. So, and we very much appreciate that. So from a revenue standpoint, you can see that our revenue really is coming from two main areas, and that's pay to participate and admissions. And it's in our world, as we talk about, especially athletically, when we talk about funding our athletics, a good portion of that probably is football and basketball. Is that from a standpoint of admissions? Is that our football games and our basketball games probably are the highest generator, and probably football being the highest, obviously, just from a standpoint of attendance. And we often joke the fact that if we get a bad weather or a bad weather night on a Friday night home football game, that can affect
it picks it big time.
Makes a big difference on your revenue on a yearly basis. That if you have half the attendance because of weather or something of that nature, that can affect your budget.
Yes.
So anyway, that gives us a good idea of revenue. So total revenue is about almost $300,000. That was in the 13-14 year, but exactly $295,812.84. That was our revenue for that year. So would you say that that's a typical average year, 13-14?
This is, the revenue is going up as the participants go up. We did have more participants last year than we had the year before. So it's up a little bit from the year before.
And in general, what affects participation, Mr. Reisner? Can you tell us what might affect the participation of our students?
Well, it could be the staff that we have, coaching staff, whether the kids are buying into the program and they want to be part of that. Winning is another. Winning teams bring winners, and more people participate in that situation there. And those are probably the two major things that kids participate.
And as you mentioned, we are seeing an upturn as we're sitting now in January of 2015. I would say that our fall was probably one of the best we've had in a long time as far as participation goes in all of our fall programs. Right. Football, soccer, cross country.
They were all up with participation.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I mean, we have great programs with great coaches, and kids want to be a part of that. And we can't lose sight of the fact that participating in something is great for kids. We want our kids to participate, be a part of whether that's a team or a sport or the band or cheerleading or whatever it might be. Obviously even our academic clubs, we hope that kids will get involved in those. So it's great for our kids to be involved, so we encourage them to do that. Maybe can we switch slides and maybe we can look at talking about the expenditures that come along with athletics. And Ms. Wogleski, can maybe you give us an idea of what we're looking at here as far as expenditures go?
Well, the expenditures, the largest area, which is presented in green, shows our athletic salaries, which includes 54 coaches. This is last year's data. The athletic director, the secretary, ticket takers, and that's $247,350. As you can see, just with that doesn't include benefits, that's just the salaries. The pay to participate doesn't even cover those uniforms. We also have the benefits that are attached to those, which is another $91,600.
And can I say we're required to pay that? We don't have an option. We
No.
couldn't decide we're not paying benefits.
No.
We have to pay that. The state requires us to pay benefits on any salaries that we pay.
Absolutely. We have the purchase services, which is the officials, and the police and the fire and the athletic trainers and entry fees, just to name a few.
And can I make a mention too? Is when you talk about purchase services, again, some people might say, well, why do you have to have all those things? Maybe you don't need those people there, but again, it's all about the safety of our kids. When we have a large athletic event, we obviously need to have security there in order to assure the safety of those attending the event. We have trainers that come and work with our kids that assure that they're healthy and that they're medically ready to play. So these are very important expenses that certainly every school district has, and we do as well, but we owe it to our kids to assure that, and our fans that attend our games, that they're safe and that our kids are safe physically and medically when they participate.
Correct. We also have, $16,000 in supplies that are used for the athletic department. Another large expenditure is $148,000 for equipment. And again, some of that equipment, under this one is for the bleachers that were purchased for the football stadium that were athletic, they were for the athletics, but as you can see, they probably weren't paid for out of the athletic budget.
Yeah, and that's not an annual expense.
No.
I mean, that's kind of a one-time thing.
Right.
We needed, the health department condemned our visitor bleachers, so and as many of our community knows, we actually went a season or two without visitor bleachers. So we were able, thanks to the sales tax, we were able to purchase new home bleachers, which again, it does fall under athletics because obviously that's where we're using those bleachers as a result of athletics. But that expenditure would be probably more of a one-time expenditure,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes. The other is the marching band, which is 3 supplementals, and custodial salaries. And when I say custodial salaries, that is just when we have a game on a Saturday when we don't have custodial coverage and we have to call the custodians.
And that's for any building use only, not for the facilities outside.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And then transportation salaries is for the bus drivers for our transporting for our events, and that's another $19,000. So in total, the expenditures that are associated with athletics for fiscal year last year were $602,000.
So, I mean, I think it's a great illustration about the fact that athletics is not a cheap proposition. I mean, there's certainly a lot of, I think when you think about it, you think, oh, well, we're going to, pay some coaches and buy some balls and that's it. I mean, that doesn't sound too bad, but there are a lot of other things that go along with the paying of athletics, and it's not a cheap proposition. So when people say, oh, why don't we just reduce pay to participate? Part of the reason is because then that's coming from somewhere else. I mean, obviously, we always talk about the pot's only so big, and we have to pay for that. We have to pay for all of these things that go along with athletics. Our participation and just thinking out loud, and again, some of these things we talk about are generalities, so I don't want somebody to take this very, very specifically, but our participation in football was up. How much? Do you have it about this year? How many new kids we had?
We were over 20.
Probably 20 new kids.
All over there.
And certainly not that we don't keep equipment for the exact number of kids. So for example, we had to buy how many new helmets do you think we bought this
We
year?
bought about 20 new helmets this year and shoulder pads.
Which a helmet costs us probably anywhere from $100 to $150 to buy a new helmet.
Yeah, about $150, $75, $50 to $75, depending on what position you're trying to take care of. For shoulder pads, and then of course you got to redo, maybe buy a couple more jerseys, get them up because you don't have enough jerseys. It's chain reaction. Once you add a kid, you ask it more expense too. So every time, to cover your expenses. So your expenses don't go down when you add more kids. So as the kids increase, so does the expense increase. So.
Yeah. Well, and again, we really just wanted to take an opportunity to try to illustrate how much we take in revenue and pay to participate, and how much athletics actually costs us, because again, I think there is a somewhat of a misnomer out there that we're making a lot of money off of pay to participate, but the fact of the matter is really athletics is a expensive proposition, and pay to participate doesn't begin to cover what the school district is paying, and obviously anything above what we're taking in pay to participate, and obviously some of those other revenue generators that you illustrate as far as your fundraisers and some of the other revenue generators, anything above and beyond that, the district is covering that expense out of the general fund. Again, we wanted to take this opportunity to illustrate that. I hope that from the standpoint of our community, this makes sense. If you have questions about anything, please feel free to contact Mr. Reisner, Ms. Wogleski, or myself. We're happy to answer questions. We want to thank the Financial Advisory Committee who took the opportunity to look a little bit more in depth at this. And as always, we want to thank our community for all of your support. It's our intention to provide as much information to our community as they request and need. This was an area that we continue to hear about, that people have questions about, so we wanted to take this opportunity to try to answer those questions, clear it up. So hopefully we've done that today, and I want to thank you for being here, Mr. Reisner, Ms. Wogleski. Thank you for being here, and we want to thank our community again for all of your support and tuning in today. This has been Brian Williams for the Best of Buckeye, and we hope you'll tune in for our next episode.